The summer heat pressed down on Oak Ridge Avenue like a hand on the back of the neck. It was a Saturday. Street vendors steaming hot dogs, a barbershop door propped open, music leaking into the sidewalk. 17-year-old Jamal Carter carried a paper bag from Morales Market, phone in one hand, a receipt fluttering from the other. He'd promised his grandmother he'd be back in 10 minutes with ginger ale and crackers. 10 minutes, no longer. She worried when he was late. A police cruiser rolled slow past the curb, windows down. Officer Len Briggs sized up the avenue like it belonged to him. He'd been on the force a decade, the kind of cop who smiled for photo ops and scowled the second the cameras were gone. The moment he spotted Jamal, the car's brake lights blinked and the cruiser eased to a stop half in a crosswalk. Briggs stepped out. "Hey, you!" he barked, chin jutting toward Jamal. "What are you doing?" Jamal turned, confused. "Just buying groceries, sir. Hands where I can see them." Jamal lifted both, bag crinkling. People at the bus stop glanced over, then did that thing city people do when trouble arrives. Look without looking, phones creeping into palms. Miss Nguyen from the nail salon stepped to her doorway, eyes narrowing. The barber, Reggie, killed the clippers and peered over the chair. Briggs walked right into Jamal's space, close enough to smell the ginger ale. "You match a description." "Of who?" Jamal asked. His voice wasn't smart, wasn't loud. It was tired. He'd had this conversation before. "Don't get slick with me." Jamal breathed in through his nose. "I'm not. I just want to go home. My grandma's waiting." "ID. My wallet's in my back pocket," Jamal said, moving slow. He reached, keeping his other hand high like he'd seen on the news 100 times. He had exactly 3 seconds of calm. "Don't reach!" Briggs shouted, and before the sentence finished, he shoved Jamal hard into the hood of the cruiser. The bag ripped, cans skittering across the asphalt, one popping and spraying soda foam. The sound, a dull wet thump of shoulder to metal, snapped the street into silence. "Hey!" Reggie yelled, stepping into the doorway. "Easy, man!" Phones lifted higher now. A teenage girl on a scooter froze, camera already recording. Amanda Torres, a local reporter off duty and out grabbing coffee, stopped cold on the corner. She knew scenes that would be stories. This was one. Jamal didn't fight. He flattened his palms on the hot hood, cheek pressed to the badge decal. "I'm not resisting, sir." Briggs yanked Jamal's elbow up past the limit of human joints, then swept his legs. Jamal's face hit metal again. Somewhere behind them, someone cried out. The ginger ale pooled beneath the bumper, sticky and sweet in the heat. "Please, please," Jamal managed, breath stuttering. "It's just groceries." "Stop resisting." "I'm not—" The baton came out like it lived there. It cracked once across Jamal's ribs, a hollow sound that punched the crowd's gut. Ms. Nguyen gasped. The girl on the scooter said, "Oh my God," into her camera. A toddler started crying and wouldn't stop. "Officer!" Reggie shouted, stepping off the curb now. "He's a kid!" Briggs pivoted, baton raised. "Back off the sidewalk or you're next." That's when Amanda slid her coffee onto a mail drop and thumbed her phone into record, her voice low to whoever might watch it live. "This is Oak Ridge and 5th. A teen, looks like a minor, is being assaulted during a stop. Identified officer, nameplate reads Briggs." She zoomed tight on the badge, the baton, the face of a boy who had learned to swallow anger and fear at the same time. Somewhere, a siren wound up, closer than background noise. Jamal's vision stuttered at the edges, stars popping behind his eyelids. He thought of his grandmother on the couch, the thinning white blanket she pulled over her knees when the AC got too strong, the way her voice softened when she said his name, "Jay, baby," like it could be a prayer. He held that sound in his head and kept his body still. "Hands behind your back," Briggs snapped. "I can't. My arm." Another shove, another thud. The baton hovered again, eager to be useful. A city bus hissed to a stop across the intersection, folding doors yawning open. 3 passengers stayed on the stairs, unmoving, recording. The driver grabbed the overhead radio and said something no one out here could hear. A notification ping rippled through the crowd. The girl's live stream had just been shared by a page with a blue check. "Len!" someone shouted from the deli door, using the officer's first name because Oak Ridge was that kind of block. "Put the baton down, man." Briggs didn't. He drew breath to yell something larger and meaner. Then the siren that had been threading through the heat rounded the corner and snapped into the scene. Not a squad car's wail, not the ambulance's restless keening. This one you felt in your chest, like a parade and a warning rolled into one. A black SUV with city plates skidded to the curb. Two plainclothes security officers spilled out before the tires fully stopped, hands open, eyes scanning. The rear door swung wide, and a man in shirt sleeves climbed out with the kind of urgency that makes space part for him. Mayor Marcus Carter moved like someone whose feet knew this asphalt. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at his son on the hood of a cruiser with a baton raised over him, and his world snapped bright and narrow. "Len," the mayor said, voice flat and cutting, like it had been sharpened before he got out of the car. "Step away from my son." The name, spoken like a verdict, sliced through the heat. For a heartbeat, Briggs didn't turn. Then he did, slowly, baton still midair, eyes sliding from the boy he'd pinned to the man who ran the city. "Mr. Mayor," Briggs said, trying to find professional from a throat suddenly dry. The baton didn't lower. Security moved, not fast, measured, precise. The bigger of the two placed a palm on the cruiser's trunk, the universal sign of hold, while the other angled between baton and boy without ever quite crossing the line to escalate. "Step away," Carter repeated. He was a big man, but that wasn't what made the air change. It was the weight in his voice, the knowledge inside it. This was his kid, and this was his city, and he knew both like the back of the hand that now pointed squarely at an officer who'd forgotten where the line was. Briggs's jaw twitched. He glanced at the phones, so many phones, and then back to the mayor. The baton dipped an inch, not enough. "I had probable cause," Briggs said, grasping for ground as it crumbled. "He matched a description?" Carter's laugh was humorless. He took one step forward. "A kid with a grocery bag on the same block he's lived on his whole life? You're beating my son in the middle of the street, Len, in front of my people, in front of me." Amanda's camera caught the mayor's face full on now. The fury, yes, but the fear beneath it, the kind that only exists when the person on the hood is blood of your blood. The stream count ticked upward so fast the numbers blurred. "Hands off the boy," the larger security officer said, voice even, "and lower the baton." Something in Briggs's posture broke, pride maybe, or the fiction that had been propping it up. He eased the baton down to his thigh. His hand still clenched it like a drowning man clutches a rope. "Now," Carter said. Briggs let go. The baton clattered to the pavement, a hard, ringing sound that made even the bus driver flinch. The crowd exhaled in a single ragged breath. "Jamal," Carter said, and this time his voice was not for the officer, not for the cameras, not for the city. It was for the boy who lifted his head from the hot metal and tried to smile because he'd learned long ago that smiling meant you were still there. "Dad," Jamal whispered. Security moved in tandem, one guiding Briggs back, the other easing Jamal upright with practiced gentleness. The mayor reached for his son's shoulder, then checked himself, fingers hovering an inch above bruised bone, a father's urge wrestling a public man's restraint. "Get EMS," Carter said without turning, "and call the chief. Tell her I want internal affairs on scene, not downtown. Here." "Right away, sir," one guard said into his sleeve mic. Briggs stared at the baton on the pavement like it had betrayed him. He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked up to find a wall of lenses and eyes and judgment waiting. The girl on the scooter angled a little closer, voice small but steady. "We saw everything." Mayor Carter didn't look at her, but the corner of his mouth tightened, gratitude and grief in the same line. He placed his palm, finally, gently, on Jamal's shoulder. "Breathe," he said. "You're okay. I'm here." The ambulance siren found the block. The city held its breath. And Oak Ridge Avenue, sweaty, noisy, ordinary Oak Ridge, knew it had just become the center of something larger than a summer Saturday. It had become the place where a line was drawn in full view, where power met power, and a father arrived not just as a parent, but as a promise. The ambulance's wails sliced through the thick August air. EMTs leapt out before the tires fully stopped, carrying a stretcher between them. The crowd shifted, parting just enough to let them through, though phones stayed high, recording every second. The smell of spilled soda mixed with the acrid heat of asphalt. Mayor Marcus Carter hadn't moved from his son's side. Jamal sat on the cruiser's bumper now, ribs aching with every breath, sweat stinging his eyes. One EMT knelt, shining a penlight into his pupils. "Bruising across the ribs," the medic murmured. "Possible fracture. We'll need to run scans." "I'm fine," Jamal whispered. His voice was soft, raspy, but determined. "Don't make a scene, Dad." The mayor crouched, meeting his son's eyes. "The scene was already made, Jay. Not by you. By him." His gaze flicked to Officer Len Briggs, who stood off to the side, guarded by Rivera's counterparts from Internal Affairs. The crowd hummed with restless energy. Some whispered, some shouted, but all eyes locked on the officer who'd raised a baton against a teenager. Reggie, the barber, wiped his hands on a towel and stepped closer. "Mayor Carter," he called. "We all saw it. He beat that boy for nothing." Others chimed in, voices overlapping. "He shoved him into the car. He said the kid matched a description." What description? He was buying ginger ale. Phones recorded every word, streaming live to social media. Amanda Torres's steady narration guided thousands of viewers who hadn't been there at the start but were now tuned in, outraged, watching history unfold. Two black sedans screeched to a stop at the corner. Out stepped Chief Elena Martinez, her posture iron straight, flanked by two Internal Affairs investigators in gray suits. The chief's eyes scanned the scene quickly: the crowd, the mayor, the wounded teen, and finally her officer. "Len," she said flatly, her voice carrying over the chatter. "Badge and weapon. Now." Briggs's jaw tightened. "Chief, Now!" Her tone brooked no argument. For a moment, the world balanced on the edge of his hesitation. Then slowly, Briggs unclipped his badge, dropping it into the investigator's waiting palm. His service weapon followed, holstered but surrendered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some clapped, others shouted approval. Jamal exhaled for the first time in minutes. Chief Martinez turned to Mayor Carter. "Sir, Internal Affairs will handle this immediately. We'll take statements from every witness." The mayor's voice was low but cutting. "Every witness out here has a phone, Chief. The city's already seen enough." Amanda captured the moment, her voice shaking slightly as she narrated live. "The officer has been stripped of his badge and weapon on scene, something rarely witnessed in public. The mayor himself stands by, his son receiving medical attention." The chants began slowly at first, from the back of the crowd. "Justice now! Justice now!" It spread like fire, dozens of voices growing into hundreds. Jamal winced at the noise, clutching his ribs. "They don't have to chant for me," he murmured. Mayor Carter placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "They're not just chanting for you, Jay. They're chanting for every kid who's ever been stopped for no reason." The boy on the scooter, still holding her phone aloft, stepped forward. "I streamed the whole thing," she said, voice trembling but proud. "It already has 50,000 views." The mayor looked at her, gratitude softening the lines of his face. "Thank you for standing up." Internal Affairs investigators began taking names and gathering statements. Ms. Nguyen described how Briggs had slammed Jamal against the cruiser. Reggie spoke about the baton, his voice firm with outrage. Amanda replayed her own footage for one investigator, time-stamped and clear. Through it all, Briggs stood stiff, sweat streaking his temples. He tried to speak once, "I had probable cause," but the crowd's reaction drowned him out. "You had nothing. You call that policing? Abuse, that's all it was." Chief Martinez raised a hand, silencing the uproar. "Enough! This investigation will proceed by the book." Mayor Carter stepped forward, his voice booming. "And the book will be read in full view of this city. No more shadows, no more excuses." The EMTs finally moved Jamal onto the stretcher, though he protested. "Dad, I can walk. You'll let them take care of you," Carter said firmly. "That's an order." The boy chuckled weakly despite the pain. "You're not in the army, Dad." The mayor's stern face cracked into a brief smile. "No, just City Hall." The crowd parted, applauding as Jamal was wheeled toward the ambulance. Phones captured every second, the applause carrying like a wave down the block. Amanda's voice narrated, "The teenager at the center of today's violence is being taken to the hospital, surrounded not by silence, but by a community demanding accountability." As the ambulance doors shut, Mayor Carter turned back to the crowd. His voice carried over the chants, raw with both fury and pride. "My son will heal, but what happened today should never have happened at all. This city belongs to every child, every parent, every neighbor, black, white, rich, poor. And it will not be ruled by fear or by abuse of power." The crowd erupted again, this time with cheers that drowned out even the sirens pulling away. In that moment, Oak Ridge Avenue transformed. It was no longer just a block with a barbershop and a market. It was the heartbeat of a city staring itself in the mirror and choosing to demand change. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and tension. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead as EMTs wheeled Jamal through double doors, his father close behind. The beeping of heart monitors, the shuffle of nurses, the urgent calls of doctors, all of it pressed down like a weight. Mayor Marcus Carter, usually unshakable behind podiums, looked every bit the worried father now. He held Jamal's phone and crumpled receipt in one hand, gripping them so tight the paper tore. "Ribs first," the attending doctor said briskly. "Get him into X-ray, pupils reactive, keep him conscious." "I'm fine," Jamal muttered again, though his voice rasped. He tried to push himself up from the stretcher, but the EMT pressed gently on his shoulder. "Stay still, son," Carter said. His voice cracked, surprising even him. In the waiting area, the press had already gathered. Amanda Torres stood at the center, microphone live, camera crew pushing against the hospital's glass doors. Viewers were outside Brookdale General, where Jamal Carter, the mayor's son, is being evaluated after a violent arrest that has shaken the city. She paused, adjusting her earpiece. Sources tell us Officer Len Briggs was stripped of his badge at the scene, pending internal affairs investigation. Behind her, citizens clustered with homemade signs, some scribbled in marker on cardboard. "Justice for Jamal. Stop police brutality. Our kids deserve better." The chant started again, echoing off the hospital's facade. "Justice now! Justice now!" Inside, Marcus paced the corridor like a caged animal. His security detail kept the press at bay, but he could hear the chants bleeding through the glass doors. Rivera, the IA officer, finally caught up to him, files tucked under her arm. "Mayor," she said, "we need your statement before this spirals further. The city's watching." Marcus stopped, shoulders tight. The city saw everything already. They saw my boy beaten for walking home with groceries. What more statement do they need? "They need to hear it from you," Rivera pressed. "Not just as a father, as the mayor." He closed his eyes, drawing a long breath. "You'll get your statement, but right now, I'm a father first." In the exam room, Jamal lay shirtless under harsh lights. Dark bruises marred his ribs, an ugly welt stretched across his shoulder blade. A nurse taped sensors to his chest, her movements brisk but kind. "Deep breath for me," she said. Jamal tried, winced, then chuckled through the pain. "Can't believe all this over ginger ale." The nurse's eyes softened. "Can't believe it either, sweetheart." When she stepped out, Marcus entered, pulling a chair close to the bed. For a long moment, he just looked at his son. Not the mayor's son, not the face on the live stream. Just Jamal, 17, stubborn, brave, hurting. "I'm sorry you went through that," Marcus said quietly. Jamal shook his head. "Not your fault." "No," Marcus admitted. "But it's my fight now." Reporters surged forward when Marcus finally stepped outside the exam wing. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust. Amanda's voice cut above the rest. "Mr. Mayor, can you confirm your son's condition?" Marcus raised a hand for silence. The crowd hushed, the weight of the moment thick in the air. "My son has bruised ribs and a swollen shoulder, but he will recover." What he and this city shouldn't have to recover from is the sight of a uniform abusing its power in broad daylight. The crowd roared approval, chants restarting with new fury. "We are better than this," Marcus continued. His voice strengthened with every word. "No father should have to see his child beaten in the street. No citizen should have to fear the one sworn to protect them. There will be accountability. There will be reform. And it starts now." Amanda leaned toward her cameraman, whispering as she broadcast live. The mayor is using this moment to pivot from personal grief to public leadership. The pressure on City Hall and the police department is about to intensify. Back in the exam room, Jamal scrolled through his phone. Notifications poured in faster than he could read. His live-streamed beating had gone viral, shared across the country. Hashtags multiplied. Hat justice. For Jamal. Stand with Carter. He sighed, turning the screen away. "I didn't want to be a symbol." His grandmother's voice crackled from a video call. "You didn't ask for it, baby, but sometimes life makes you one." Jamal smiled weakly. "I just wanted ginger ale." She laughed, though her eyes shone with tears. "And you came back with a whole movement." Meanwhile, at the precinct, Officer Briggs sat in an interrogation room, sweat beading his forehead. Internal Affairs had confiscated his phone, his locker key, his weapon. He was no longer a cop, just a man in a chair, face pale, hands shaking. One investigator leaned across the table. "It's all on video, Briggs. The live stream, the eyewitnesses, the mayor himself. You want to explain why you beat an unarmed teenager? Briggs swallowed hard. He matched a description. The investigator slammed a folder onto the table, spilling photos of Jamal with his groceries. That excuse won't save you. Not this time. That night, Brookdale General's parking lot glowed with candles. Hundreds of citizens held vigil, their faces illuminated by flickering flames. They weren't just there for Jamal, they were there for themselves, their children, their city. Amanda's closing broadcast carried across the nation. A single act of brutality has ignited a demand for justice that can't be silenced. Tonight, Brookdale stands united. Not in fear, but in determination. Inside, Jamal drifted to sleep, his father keeping watch by the bed. And outside, a city that had seen enough promised change by the light of candles and the strength of voices that refused to fade. By Monday morning, the city felt like it was holding its breath. Brookdale's skyline gleamed under clear skies, but beneath it the streets pulsed with anger, hope, and uncertainty. The video of Officer Len Briggs's assault on Jamal Carter had been replayed millions of times. News anchors debated it, activists dissected it, and ordinary citizens shared it with captions like, "This could have been my son." Mayor Marcus Carter sat in his office at City Hall, tie loosened, coffee untouched. His desk was stacked with folders, statements, and reports, but it was the steady buzz of his phone that gnawed at him. National networks wanted interviews. The governor's office wanted updates. Civil rights organizations wanted commitments. And outside, on the steps of City Hall, hundreds had gathered with signs and chants, their voices echoing through the streets. "Justice for Jamal! No more Briggs! Reform now!" Marcus rubbed his temples, the sound seeping through the windows like a tide. Chief Elena Martinez entered the office, her uniform immaculate despite the bags under her eyes. She placed a thin folder on his desk. "Internal Affairs finished their preliminary review," she said. Marcus opened it, scanning quickly. "And? Briggs is suspended without pay, pending termination and possible criminal charges. Use of excessive force, assault, filing a false report. It's airtight, Marcus. The video leaves no room for spin." "Good," Marcus muttered, though his tone carried no relief. He closed the folder with a sharp slap. But one officer isn't the whole story. People out there don't just want Briggs's head. They want proof this department isn't rotten through and through. Martinez crossed her arms. "You want a clean house? Fine. But understand, half the union will push back. They'll claim politics, scapegoating, witch hunt. You'll be at war with your own police force." Marcus leaned forward, eyes burning. "Then let it be a war. My son's bruises are still fresh. I won't bury this in committee meetings and policy drafts. Change starts now." At the hospital, Jamal scrolled through his phone, frowning at the endless stream of notifications. His ribs still ached, his breathing shallow, but rest eluded him. He saw his face on news thumbnails, his name in hashtags, his bruises frozen in stills shared by strangers across the country. Evelyn, his grandmother, sat knitting quietly in the corner, glancing up every few minutes. "You shouldn't look at all that, baby. It'll just make the pain worse." "I didn't ask for this," Jamal murmured. "I didn't want to be the face of anything." Evelyn set her knitting aside, her voice gentle but firm. "Nobody asks to be a symbol, but sometimes the world chooses you, and when it does, you don't shrink from it. You stand tall, like your father did." Jamal sighed, setting the phone down. "I just wanted to bring you ginger ale." She smiled softly. "And instead, you brought this city to its feet." Back at City Hall, Marcus faced the press in a packed chamber. Amanda Torres stood front row, microphone raised. "Mr. Mayor," she began, "the footage of your son's assault has gone national. What concrete steps will you take to ensure accountability, not just for Officer Briggs, but for the system that enabled him?" Marcus gripped the podium, eyes sweeping the room. "What happened to my son was not just a failure of one officer. It was a failure of oversight, of training, of accountability. That ends now. Effective immediately, Brookdale will launch an independent review board with citizen oversight. Every use of force case will be reviewed publicly. No more hiding behind closed doors." Reporters scribbled furiously, flashes popping. Amanda pressed further. "And what about the police union, Mr. Mayor? They've already issued a statement defending Briggs." The mayor's jaw tightened. "Let them defend brutality. I'll defend this city's children. If that puts us at odds, so be it." The chamber erupted in questions, but Marcus raised his hand, cutting through the noise. Understand this. My son will heal, but unless we change, someone else's won't. And I won't accept that future for Brookdale. Outside, the crowd roared as word of the reforms spread. Chants turned into cheers, signs waved higher, and the air buzzed with a fragile but rising hope. Amanda went live immediately, her voice sharp and urgent. The mayor has announced sweeping reforms and the creation of a civilian oversight board. For a city long plagued by allegations of misconduct, this is a seismic shift. Her broadcast cut to footage of Jamal in the hospital, smiling faintly as he held his grandmother's hand. The caption read, "Strength in silence." Meanwhile, in his holding cell, Briggs seethed as he watched the news. His name was Mud, his career over, his badge gone. He muttered under his breath, fists clenching. "They're making me the villain," he growled. Another officer outside the bars glanced at him coldly. "Maybe that's because you are." Briggs turned away, but the truth hung heavy. He'd lost everything, and the city had chosen its side, and it wasn't his. That night, Brookdale pulsed with energy. Vigils sprang up at the square, candles flickering against posters of Jamal's face. Murals began to appear on walls, painted by local artists, a boy standing tall, grocery bag in hand, beneath the words, "Justice for All." From his hospital window, Jamal saw the glow of the candles below, the flicker of lights rising into the night. For the first time since the assault, his lips curved into a real smile. "Dad's not just fighting for me," he whispered. "He's fighting for all of us." By Tuesday morning, Brookdale wasn't just a city in crisis. It was the headline of every major news outlet in the country. National anchors framed the footage of Jamal's assault side by side with Mayor Marcus Carter's fiery speech. Editorials debated police reform, interviews with activists filled the airwaves, and political pundits speculated about the mayor's future on a larger stage. On Oakridge Avenue, where it had all started, reporters swarmed like flies to honey. The barbershop, Morales Market, even Ms. Nguyen's nail salon became backdrops for cable segments. Reggie shook his head as he swept hair from the floor. "Never thought my block would end up on CNN," he muttered, half proud, half weary. At City Hall, the pressure tightened. Marcus sat in the council chamber facing not just reporters but angry voices from the police union. A dozen uniformed officers, off-duty but loud, filled the back rows, arms crossed, scowls carved into their faces. Their representative, Frank Delaney, stepped forward with a voice like gravel. "You're crucifying a man before trial," Delaney barked. "Briggs was doing his job. You want to fire every cop who makes a hard call under pressure?" Marcus stood, jaw set. "Beating an unarmed teenager buying groceries is not a hard call, Mr. Delaney. It's brutality. And if the badge protects that, then the badge has lost its meaning." The chamber erupted, union members shouting, citizens cheering, reporters scribbling. Councilwoman Ortiz banged her gavel for order, but the noise was unstoppable. Amanda Torres, reporting live from the front row, leaned toward her cameraman. "The mayor is locking horns with the police union, refusing to bend. The question now, can he push reforms without breaking the city in half?" At Brookdale General, Jamal watched the chaos on TV, propped up in his hospital bed. His ribs were taped, his breathing shallow but stronger. His grandmother clucked her tongue. "They're tearing the city apart over you, baby." "I didn't want this," Jamal murmured. He turned the channel only to find his own face again, frozen mid-frame, bruised and weary. Evelyn squeezed his hand. "Sometimes you don't get to choose the fight. It chooses you." A knock at the door startled them both. A woman entered, tall, in her 40s, with a suit that looked sharp enough to cut. She introduced herself quickly. "My name is Alicia Green. I'm a civil rights attorney. Your family's case is already national news, and there are organizations ready to support you. Lawsuits, reforms, protections." Marcus, who had arrived just minutes earlier, eyed her carefully. "We haven't decided on legal action yet." Alicia nodded. "Understood, but the city is watching. Whatever you decide will echo far beyond Brookdale." Jamal shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "I don't want to be a case file." "You're more than that," Alicia said softly. "You're a spark." Back on Oakridge Avenue, protesters filled the sidewalks. What began as a vigil had become a march, spilling into traffic, forcing the city to reroute buses. Chants thundered through the streets. "Justice for Jamal! Reform now!" Signs waved high, painted with his name, his bruised face, his father's words. Amanda walked backward through the march, camera crew filming every angle. "This is no longer a neighborhood issue," she said breathlessly into her mic. "This is a citywide uprising, pulling together citizens from every background, but the question remains, how far will it spread?" As if on cue, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyes widening. "We're being told solidarity protests are already happening in Chicago, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. Brookdale's fight has gone national." At the precinct, officers grumbled in the locker room. Some cursed Briggs for dragging them into this mess. Others muttered that the mayor had turned his back on the force. The department was splitting down the middle, loyalty to the badge on one side, loyalty to justice on the other. Chief Martinez addressed them sharply. "Every one of you took an oath. If you can't uphold it, turn in your badge now. The city won't tolerate cowards hiding behind blue walls." Silence fell. No one moved, but no one argued either. That night, Marcus held a press conference on the steps of City Hall. His voice echoed against stone columns lit by television lights. "This is not just about my son. This is about every child who deserves to walk home without fear. Reform will happen. Accountability will happen. Brookdale will lead by example." Reporters shouted questions. Amanda pushed to the front. "Mr. Mayor, national leaders are calling for you to run for higher office after this. Will you?" Marcus shook his head firmly. "This isn't about politics. This is about survival. For my city, for my son, for every citizen who believes dignity is worth defending." The crowd roared. Lanterns rose into the night, floating like small stars over Brookdale. Jamal watched them from his hospital window, his reflection overlaying the glowing sky. For the first time, he whispered words he'd been afraid to say aloud. "Maybe Grandma's right. Maybe this fight chose me." The morning sun poured through the hospital blinds, turning the room golden. Jamal lay propped up against the pillows, ribs aching but eyes sharp. His phone buzzed nonstop, every notification another reminder that the world was watching. His father sat at the small table, tie undone, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. Evelyn folded Jamal's clothes neatly at the foot of the bed, her movements steady, her silence saying more than words. "Dad," Jamal said finally, voice low, "I can't just stay here. Not while they're out there chanting my name." Marcus looked up from his cup. "You're recovering. That's your job right now." Jamal shook his head. "No, my job is to tell the truth. If people are marching because of me, they deserve to hear from me, not just see my face on posters." Evelyn touched Jamal's hand gently. "Baby, you don't owe them anything." Jamal's jaw tightened. "Maybe not. But if I stay quiet, it feels like Briggs wins." That afternoon, a press conference was arranged inside the hospital auditorium. It wasn't large, but cameras crowded the aisles, reporters jockeying for position. The air buzzed with anticipation. Everyone wanted to hear from the boy at the center of Brookdale's storm. Amanda Torres sat front row, notebook ready, microphone in hand. She'd covered dozens of pressers, but her gut told her this one was different. When Jamal entered, the room fell silent. He wore a plain hoodie, his ribs still taped beneath it, a bruise darkening his cheek. He walked slowly, carefully, but without hesitation. His father flanked him, and Evelyn stayed just off stage, worry etched across her face. Jamal stepped up to the podium. The microphones bristled like a forest before him. He gripped the sides, steadying himself. "My name is Jamal Carter," he began, voice trembling at first, then growing stronger. "I'm 17. I was walking home from the store when Officer Briggs stopped me. I wasn't carrying a weapon, I wasn't breaking the law, I was carrying ginger ale and crackers for my grandma." The cameras clicked furiously. Amanda's pen flew across the page. "He shoved me against his car. He hit me. He said I matched a description. But the only thing I matched was being black in the wrong place at the wrong time." Gasps rippled through the room. Jamal drew a deep breath, his ribs protesting. "I want everyone to know. I didn't resist. I didn't fight back. I couldn't. Because I knew if I did, I might not be standing here today." Outside, crowds gathered around big screens set up in the hospital parking lot. Chants faded to silence as his words boomed through speakers. The city leaned in. Inside, Jamal's eyes burned, but his voice stayed clear. "I don't want to be a symbol. I don't want to be a hashtag. I just want to live in a city where a kid can buy groceries without being beaten by the people who are supposed to protect us." Reporters scribbled furiously. Amanda's throat tightened as she whispered into her mic, "This isn't just testimony. This is a call to conscience." Jamal gripped the podium harder, the tremor in his hands visible. But since I've been made into a symbol, I'll say this. It's not just about me. It's about every kid who's been stopped, every family who's been afraid, every parent who's had to give their child the talk about how to survive a police stop. It's about respect, dignity, and justice. The room erupted in applause, not from the press but from the citizens invited to witness. Some stood, clapping until their hands stung. Evelyn wiped a tear, whispering, "That's my boy." After the conference, Marcus led Jamal back to the hospital room, reporters calling after them. One shouted, "Jamal, do you forgive Officer Briggs?" Jamal stopped just long enough to answer, voice firm. "Forgiveness comes after accountability." The words struck like lightning. Within minutes, they were replayed across news networks, turned into headlines, printed on protest signs. Later that evening, back in his hospital bed, Jamal scrolled through his phone again. This time, instead of feeling overwhelmed, he saw something new: solidarity. Kids in other cities posted videos holding grocery bags, chanting "Justice for Jamal." Veterans in uniform shared his speech with captions like, "This young man speaks for all of us." Evelyn sat beside him, knitting half-finished on her lap. "See, baby, you didn't just speak, you lit a fire." Marcus, standing at the window, watched the candlelight vigil glowing across the hospital lawn. "And now," he murmured, "we have to keep it burning." At the precinct, Briggs watched Jamal's speech on a small TV bolted to the wall of the holding cell, his face flushed red, jaw clenching with every word. "He's turning them all against me," Briggs muttered. The guard leaned against the doorway. "No, Briggs, you did that yourself." Briggs turned away, but Jamal's voice still echoed from the screen. "Forgiveness comes after accountability." That night, Brookdale streets filled again. Protesters carried candles, their flames reflecting in shop windows. On one corner, a muralist painted Jamal's face, bruises and all, with the words "Dignity First" in bold letters across the wall. Amanda closed her nightly broadcast with a solemn tone. What began as a brutal assault has become a citywide movement and now a national conversation. Tonight, Brookdale is not just demanding justice, it is demanding change. Inside his hospital room, Jamal lay awake, ribs aching but heart steady. For the first time since the assault, he didn't feel powerless. He felt the weight of something bigger than himself and the strength to carry it. The morning after Jamal's speech, Brookdale was unrecognizable. Murals blossomed across brick walls overnight, candles still burned at intersections, and protest signs leaned against lampposts like silent sentinels. The air felt charged, like a storm building that no one could stop. At City Hall, Mayor Marcus Carter faced a wall of reporters before sunrise. His security ushered him inside, but the questions followed like shadows. "Mr. Mayor, is Jamal's statement influencing city policy? Are you at war with the police union? Has Washington contacted you about federal reform?" Marcus didn't answer, jaw tight, eyes forward. He had bigger battles waiting upstairs. The council chamber was already packed. Council members argued in low voices, aides whispered urgent updates, and a few off-duty officers filled the gallery seats, arms crossed in silent defiance. Councilwoman Ortiz struck the gavel. "This emergency session will come to order." Frank Delaney, the union rep, wasted no time. He strode to the center with a sneer. "The mayor is using his son's accident as a political weapon. Officer Briggs is being railroaded to score points with activists. This is disgraceful." Marcus shot to his feet, fury in his voice. "An accident? You call beating a child against a squad car an accident? My son wasn't carrying a weapon. He was carrying groceries for his grandmother." The chamber erupted. Citizens in the gallery shouted back at Delaney, "We saw the video! Accountability now! No more cover-ups!" Ortiz hammered the gavel, but the noise refused to die. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras rolled, and the clash spread instantly across social media. At Brookdale General, Jamal watched the live stream from his bed. His ribs still throbbed, but he couldn't look away. He saw his father's voice shake the room, saw the union dig in its heels. He muttered under his breath, "They're trying to bury it." Evelyn touched his shoulder, "And your father's not letting them." Still, the weight pressed down. Jamal had never asked for any of this. He wanted his bruises to heal, his life to slip back into normal. But normal was gone, replaced by headlines and hashtags. His phone buzzed. Messages poured in, support from kids he'd never met, stories from teens in other cities sharing their own run-ins with police. One line stopped him cold. Because of you, I spoke up for the first time. He stared at it, his chest tight. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe silence wasn't an option. Meanwhile, in the chamber, Marcus held his ground. Reform is not optional. From this day forward, Brookdale will implement body cameras on every officer, independent oversight on every use of force case, and mandatory de-escalation training. If the union wants to fight that, they'll be fighting not just me, but the people of this city. Delaney's face darkened. You're dismantling the department from the inside. Morale is already collapsing. Good luck keeping the streets safe when half your officers walk out. Marcus leaned forward, voice sharp as glass. Maybe the ones willing to walk out were never here to keep us safe in the first place. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Reporters fired off texts, already knowing this quote would lead the evening news. Outside, protesters gathered on the city hall steps. Amanda Torres stood among them, broadcasting live. The mayor is clashing directly with the union, calling out what he calls a culture of impunity. His words are drawing both praise and fury. Tonight, Brookdale may be closer than ever to real change, or to a complete breakdown between City Hall and its police force. Behind her, chants thundered, "No justice, no peace!" At the precinct, Briggs sat in his holding cell, watching the coverage on a grainy TV. His face twisted as he listened to Marcus's words. "He's destroying everything," Briggs muttered. The guard on duty replied coldly, "You destroyed yourself the second you swung that baton." Briggs slammed his fist against the bars but said nothing more. Back at the hospital, Jamal's room grew crowded with visitors. Friends from school arrived with balloons and cards. Coaches stopped by, promising the team was with him. Even strangers sent flowers. But the most important visitor wasn't holding gifts. Alicia Green, the civil rights lawyer, returned with a folder in hand. "The nation's watching," she said softly. "Other cities are asking for your story. If you're willing, Jamal, you could testify before Congress about police reform." The room fell silent. Evelyn's knitting needles stilled, Marcus's jaw tightened, and Jamal blinked, stunned. "Congress?" he whispered. "I'm just a kid." "You're more than that now," Alicia replied. "You're a voice, and voices like yours don't come along often." Jamal swallowed hard, unsure if he was ready, but knowing deep down the choice might not be his anymore. That night, the city glowed with candlelight again. Marches stretched for blocks, their chants carrying into the summer sky. Marcus stood at his office window, watching from above, exhaustion in his bones but fire still in his chest. In the hospital, Jamal lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Alicia's words replaying in his head. "Testify. Be a voice." He exhaled slowly. "Grandma," he whispered, "what if I mess it up?" Evelyn leaned close, brushing his forehead with her hand. "Baby, you can't mess up the truth. All you gotta do is tell it." The hospital felt smaller with every passing day. Jamal Carter had learned the rhythm of its halls, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, the steady beep of heart monitors, the soft clatter of meal trays. But now, the rhythm was interrupted by knocks on his door. City council members, activists, journalists, everyone wanted a piece of him. He wasn't just Jamal anymore. He was justice for Jamal. He was hashtags, chants, murals. He was the face of a movement he hadn't asked for. Marcus tried to shield him, but even the mayor couldn't hold back the tide. "Son, you don't have to talk to anyone you don't want to," Marcus said firmly one morning, pacing at the foot of the bed. "But if I don't," Jamal replied, "they'll just talk for me, twist it however they want." He gestured toward the TV bolted to the wall. Another pundit panel was debating his bruises as though they were evidence in a trial. Evelyn set down her knitting, her voice calm but sharp. "The world will say what it wants, baby, but the truth? It only comes from your mouth. That's what they need to hear." That afternoon, Alicia Green returned with her folder of possibilities. She pulled up a chair beside Jamal's bed, her expression serious. "Congress is holding a hearing on police reform in 3 weeks," she explained. "They want real voices, survivors, witnesses. Jamal, your testimony could change laws." The words hung heavy in the air. Jamal rubbed his bandaged ribs, eyes darting to his father. "Laws? I'm just trying to heal." "You can do both," Alicia said, "but it's your choice. No one can make it for you." Marcus folded his arms. "Let me be clear, Ms. Green. My son's health comes first. He's not a pawn for anyone's agenda." Alicia didn't flinch. "And I'm not here for an agenda. I'm here because your son already sparked something that won't stop. If he stays silent, the movement loses momentum. If he speaks, it grows stronger. Meanwhile, across town, Brookdale's police union headquarters bristled with anger. Frank Delaney slammed a fist on the table. The mayor's tearing this department apart. Body cams, oversight boards, discipline hearings, it's all theater. Another officer, a sergeant with years on the force, muttered, "Maybe it's not theater. Maybe Briggs really screwed up." Delaney's eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare turn on your own. Briggs is a scapegoat. If we let this stand, every cop in the city will be one mistake away from ruin." Murmurs filled the room, some agreeing, others uneasy. The department was fracturing, fault lines deepening with every news cycle. Back at the hospital, Jamal scrolled through messages again. One video caught his eye. A group of middle school kids in Atlanta holding signs that read, "We stand with Jamal." Another showed veterans in uniform saluting with the caption, "Respect first." He handed the phone to his father. "Look at this. They're marching in cities we've never even been to." Marcus studied the videos quietly, his chest tight with pride and fear. "They're looking to you, Jay, but it's a heavy burden, heavier than your ribs can handle." Jamal leaned back, wincing as pain flared. "Maybe, but what if the burden is what keeps someone else from ending up in this bed?" Evelyn smiled softly, pride shining through her wrinkles. "That's your father's son talking." That evening, Marcus addressed the city again from City Hall. Amanda Torres reported live, her voice steady as she painted the scene for viewers. The mayor has doubled down on reforms, calling for immediate retraining programs and transparency measures. But the police union is pushing back harder than ever, accusing him of betraying the badge. Behind her, protesters lit candles, their chants echoing into the night. "No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace." Inside, Marcus faced the cameras, exhaustion in his eyes but fire in his words. "My son is not a pawn. He is a child who was brutalized for no reason. And if his suffering can change this city for the better, then we owe it to him, and every child, to see this through." The applause from citizens in the chamber drowned out the jeers from union supporters. Later, Jamal watched the replay from his hospital bed. His father's voice carried conviction, but Jamal could see the toll it was taking. The lines on Marcus's face looked deeper, his shoulders heavier. "Dad's fighting everyone at once," Jamal whispered. Evelyn reached over, squeezing his hand. "And you can help him fight if you're ready." Jamal closed his eyes, Alicia's words replaying in his mind. "Your testimony could change laws." The idea scared him, but the fear was mixed with something else, responsibility. That night, Jamal dreamed of the street where it all began. He saw himself pressed against the squad car, Briggs's baton raised. But this time, he didn't feel helpless. Behind him stood crowds with candles, kids with signs, veterans saluting. His father's voice echoed, booming like thunder. "Respect first!" Jamal woke with a start, chest heaving. He stared out the hospital window at the city lights and whispered to himself, "Maybe it's time." By the time Thursday rolled around, Brookdale felt like a city split in two. On one side were the candlelight vigils, murals, and marches. On the other, simmering resentment within the police union and whispers of retaliation against City Hall. Mayor Marcus Carter arrived at his office before dawn, the skyline painted in gray and gold. A thick folder waited on his desk, complaints, reports, and threats. Rivera from Internal Affairs leaned against the doorframe, her face grim. "You should see this," she said, sliding over a file. "Anonymous tips say certain officers are planning a slowdown. They'll respond late to calls, drag their feet on patrols. It's their way of showing the city how much it needs them." Marcus flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening. "So they're going to hold the people hostage just to prove a point?" Rivera nodded. "It's reckless, dangerous, but it's the union's oldest trick." Marcus slammed the folder shut. "Then we'll show them the city can't be blackmailed." At Brookdale General, Jamal pushed himself out of bed, moving carefully with each step. His ribs still ached, but he insisted on walking the hallways now. Nurses nodded with encouragement, though one muttered, "Stubborn, just like his father." Evelyn trailed behind, knitting bag tucked under her arm. "Don't overdo it, baby." "I'm fine, Grandma," Jamal said, though sweat beaded his forehead. He paused at a waiting room where the TV blared news coverage. The headline scrolled, "Brookdale Police Union Threatens Slowdown Amid Reform Push." Jamal frowned, sinking into a chair. "So they're mad they can't just beat people anymore?" he muttered. A nearby nurse overheard and chuckled grimly. "Seems that way." Evelyn sat beside him, patting his hand. "Let your daddy handle that fight. Yours is telling the truth." At City Hall, Marcus gathered his staff. We'll increase civilian patrol volunteers, coordinate with the fire department for emergency response, and push transparency on every delay. If officers slow walk calls, the public will know who's responsible. His aide, Jordan, raised a brow. That's risky. If crime spikes, the blame could land on you. Marcus leaned forward, fire in his eyes. If we back down, nothing changes. I'd rather risk my seat than my son's future. Meanwhile, Jamal received another visit from Alicia Green. She carried a slimmer folder this time, her expression gentler. The Congressional Committee has confirmed they want you to testify, she said softly. But if you're not ready, we can decline. Jamal looked at her, then at his father, who had arrived mid-conversation. What if I freeze? What if I mess it up? Marcus crouched by the bed, meeting his son's eyes. Son, when you spoke at that press conference, you didn't freeze. You lit a fire. People marched in other cities because of your words. If you choose this, you won't be alone. Evelyn smiled knowingly. Besides, baby, the truth don't need polishing. Just say it plain. Jamal exhaled, long and shaky. Then I'll do it. Word spread fast. By evening, national outlets were already reporting. Mayor's son to testify before Congress. The announcement electrified protesters and enraged the union in equal measure. At the precinct, Frank Delaney paced furiously. Now the kid's taking this circus to Washington? This is a war against the badge. One younger officer sitting at the back finally spoke. Or maybe it's a war against what the badge has become. The room went silent. For the first time, cracks in loyalty showed. Amanda Torres reported live from outside the hospital, voice sharp against the chants behind her. Tonight, confirmation that Jamal Carter, the mayor's son and survivor of police brutality, will testify before Congress. His story is no longer just Brookdale's, it belongs to the nation. The camera panned to the crowd of supporters holding candles, chanting Jamal's name. Inside his hospital room, Jamal watched the coverage, stunned by the sound of hundreds chanting outside his window. It doesn't feel real, he whispered. Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. It's real. And it's only the beginning. Later that night, the slowdowns began. Emergency calls sat unanswered for minutes, sometimes hours. Citizens tweeted furious updates. Waited 45 minutes for help. 911 told us no units available. Amanda's late-night broadcast cut sharp. The police union is accused of orchestrating a work slowdown, leaving citizens vulnerable in a dangerous display of retaliation. City Hall is scrambling to respond. Marcus stood in his office, staring out at the city. He knew the union wanted to break him, to turn public opinion by letting crime fester. But the chants outside, growing louder by the day, told him something else. Brookdale wasn't breaking. It was rising. In the hospital, Jamal couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the words he'd spoken at the podium, imagining how much louder they'd echo in Washington. Fear coiled in his chest, but so did resolve. Evelyn's soft voice reached him from the chair by his bed. You're stronger than you think, baby. Your ribs might hurt, but your spirit's unbreakable. Jamal whispered back, then I'll make sure they hear it. Brookdale's skyline was painted in orange and pink as the sun rose, but inside City Hall, the mood was anything but calm. Mayor Marcus Carter sat at a long oak table with his senior staff, folders spread out like battle plans. Jordan, his aide, tapped a stack of papers. The slowdown is worse than we thought. Average 911 response time tripled last night. Social media is tearing the department apart. Citizens blaming cops, cops blaming you. Marcus rubbed his temples. Good. Let the people see where the problem really is. Every second they delay is another reason we need reform. Chief Martinez leaned forward, voice clipped. We're investigating officers who intentionally ignored calls. Some will face suspension. Suspension isn't enough, Marcus said, his voice cold. If they're endangering lives, they're done. The room fell quiet. Everyone understood. Marcus wasn't just the mayor anymore. He was a father waging war. Meanwhile, in Brookdale General, Jamal Carter sat upright in bed, a notebook balanced on his lap. His ribs still ached with every breath, but his hand moved steadily across the page. I wasn't a threat. I was just a kid with groceries. He paused, chewing the end of his pen. Alicia Green sat beside him, her briefcase open, papers fanned out. Start with what you lived, she advised. Details matter, not just the pain, but the humanity. Make them see you, not just a case. Jamal nodded slowly. Like the bag of ginger ale cans rolling across the pavement, I still hear the sound. That's exactly it. Alicia said softly. Those moments stick. They'll stick with Congress too. Evelyn sat knitting in the corner, watching proudly. Baby, you just tell the truth. That's all they need to hear. Reporters swarmed the hospital lobby, cameras flashing whenever Marcus arrived to visit his son. Amanda Torres, covering live, addressed the nation. Sources confirm Jamal Carter has begun preparing testimony for Congress. If delivered, his words could carry enormous weight in shaping future police reform legislation. Meanwhile, Brookdale faces chaos as the police union escalates its work slowdown. Behind her, protesters outside the hospital held up signs. Let Jamal speak and accountability now. The chants carried through the glass doors, reaching Jamal's room faintly like an echo. Across town, the police union doubled down. Frank Delaney barked orders at his members in their cluttered office. Keep dragging your feet. The mayor wants war, we'll give him war. The public will beg for us back once they see the city crumble. But cracks showed. A younger officer, barely a year on the force, muttered, "What if the public doesn't beg? What if they side with him?" Delaney glared. "Then they'll learn what happens without us." Murmurs filled the room. Loyalty was slipping. Back in the hospital, Jamal read aloud from his notebook as Alicia recorded him on her phone for practice. "My name is Jamal Carter. I was walking home when Officer Briggs stopped me. He didn't see me as a kid or as someone's grandson. He saw me as a threat, and for that he beat me." He faltered, voice catching. Alicia lowered the phone. "It's okay, breathe. It's supposed to hurt. That's how they'll feel it too." Marcus stepped in then, placing a steady hand on his son's shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect, Jay. You just have to be real." Jamal swallowed hard. "I can do real." That night, City Hall glowed under protest lights. Crowds gathered, holding candles that flickered against the stone columns. Amanda's voice narrated the scene live. "This isn't just about one family anymore. Brookdale has become ground zero for a national reckoning. And tomorrow, the mayor is expected to announce new disciplinary actions against officers participating in the slowdown." Inside, Marcus stared out his office window, watching the candles below. "They're giving us strength, Jay," he whispered to himself. "We can't waste it." In his holding cell, Briggs sat hunched, watching Jamal's practice testimony on the small TV bolted to the wall. His jaw clenched as Jamal's words echoed. "He didn't see me as a kid." Briggs muttered, "That's not how it happened," though even he didn't sound convinced. The guard nearby scoffed. "World's not buying your version anymore." The next morning, Jamal sat with his father, notebook open between them. "Dad," he said quietly, "what if they don't believe me? What if Congress just shrugs it off?" Marcus looked him straight in the eye. "Son, when you stood at that podium the other day, the whole city believed you. And now the nation's listening. Congress doesn't get to shrug you off. Not anymore." Jamal exhaled, his fear mingling with resolve. He closed the notebook and whispered, "Then let's finish this." By Friday, Brookdale felt like a city balanced on a knife's edge. Morning commuters passed protesters with signs, while patrol cars crawled down streets slower than ever, sirens silent. Mayor Marcus Carter strode into City Hall with dark circles under his eyes. His chief of staff, Jordan, matched his pace, shuffling through fresh reports. "Calls delayed again last night. A robbery response took over an hour. Citizens are furious, at the union, but some are starting to blame you." Marcus stopped cold, his voice sharp. "Blame me for demanding accountability? Let them. I won't trade my son's dignity for their comfort." Chief Martinez entered behind them, dropping a folder on the desk. "We've identified 12 officers who deliberately ignored calls. I want them suspended immediately." Marcus nodded. "Do it. Publicize the names. If they want to play games, they'll do it in the open." Jordan winced. "The union will explode." Marcus's reply was ice. "Let them." At Brookdale General, Jamal Carter sat in a small conference room off the main wing. The hospital staff had agreed to let him rehearse privately. Alicia Green stood beside him, recording phone in hand, while Evelyn arranged chairs as though it were a real audience. "Pretend Congress is sitting right here," Alicia said. Jamal swallowed, hands trembling as he gripped his notes. "My name is Jamal Carter. I'm 17. I was beaten for buying ginger ale, and I'm here to say this isn't just my story, it's a pattern." He paused, his voice faltering. Evelyn leaned forward, knitting in her lap, and whispered, "Don't read it, baby. Feel it." Jamal set the papers down, exhaled, and tried again. "When Officer Briggs slammed me against his car, I wasn't thinking about laws or reforms, I was thinking I might die. And no child should have to think that. Alicia lowered the phone, eyes shining. That's it. That's the voice Congress needs to hear. Outside the hospital, Amanda Torres delivered a live update. Behind her, crowds gathered with candles and posters of Jamal's face. Sources confirm Jamal Carter has begun rehearsing his testimony. Activists say his words could shift the national conversation on police reform. Meanwhile, the police union's deliberate slowdown continues to endanger Brookdale residents. Her phone buzzed mid-broadcast with a new alert. She glanced at it, then straight into the camera. Breaking now, the mayor has suspended 12 officers accused of participating in the slowdown. Their names have been made public. Gasps rippled through the crowd behind her before chants rose again. No justice, no peace! At the precinct, chaos erupted. Officers slammed lockers, shouting in anger. Delaney, the union rep, roared above the noise. This is war. He's painting us as criminals to save his own skin. But not everyone joined the fury. A sergeant spoke quietly, almost trembling. Maybe he's right. Maybe Briggs went too far, and now we're making it worse. Delaney's glare cut like steel. If you're not with us, you're against us. The room fell silent, but the division was clear. That night, Marcus faced a city boiling with tension. He stood on the steps of City Hall, flanked by council members and activists, the glow of TV lights burning hot. I will not let intimidation dictate this city's future, he declared. Every officer who dishonors their oath will be held accountable. And when my son testifies, he will not stand alone. Brookdale will stand with him. The crowd erupted, cheers and chants crashing together like waves. Reporters captured every word, their tweets and broadcasts firing across the nation. Inside his hospital room, Jamal watched the speech with Evelyn at his side. His father's voice thundered through the TV, but all Jamal could feel was the weight pressing heavier on his chest. They're fighting over me, he whispered. Every chant, every headline, it's all because I got hurt. Evelyn turned to him, her eyes soft but unyielding. No, baby. It's because what happened to you happens to too many. You just had the courage and the pain to shine a light on it. Jamal nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. Then I won't waste it. Later that night, while the city simmered, Alicia sat with Jamal one last time before leaving. She closed her folder and looked him in the eye. When you speak in Washington, remember this. You're not just Jamal Carter, the mayor's son. You're every kid who's ever been stopped, searched, or scared for no reason. Speak for them and they'll hear you. Jamal looked out the window at the candlelight vigil glowing below, thousands of small flames flickering in the dark. I will, he whispered. I promise. At the precinct, Briggs sat alone in his cell, watching the mayor's speech replay on the news. Each word felt like a nail in his coffin. His eyes narrowed as the reporter repeated the suspensions. They're all turning on me, he muttered. Even my own. The guard outside shook his head. No, Briggs. They're finally seeing the truth. Briggs slumped back against the wall, but Jamal's words from rehearsal echoed faintly through the TV. No child should have to think they might die buying groceries. For the first time, Briggs had no reply. Saturday morning, Brookdale streets pulsed with anticipation. Flyers had spread across neighborhoods all week. Justice for Jamal rally, downtown plaza. By noon, thousands filled the square, their voices already rising in waves of chants. Signs bobbed above the crowd. Dignity first, accountability now, and Jamal's face painted like a symbol. Inside the hospital, Jamal Carter sat on the edge of his bed, sneakers half-tied, palms sweaty. Alicia Green watched him from the doorway, arms crossed. You don't have to do this today, she said gently. Jamal shook his head. If I can't face my own city, how can I face Congress? Evelyn fussed over his hoodie, tugging the sleeves just right. Just remember, baby, you speak from the heart, not the paper. Marcus entered then, his suit jacket off, tie loose, eyes heavy from another sleepless night. He studied his son for a long moment, pride and worry tangled in his face. The plaza's ready. So is the city. The question is, are you? Jamal swallowed hard, then nodded. I am. Downtown, Amanda Torres stood at the edge of the stage, reporting live. Crowds are swelling in Brookdale Plaza. The atmosphere is electric, with people of all backgrounds calling for reform. But all eyes are on one young man, the teenager whose assault ignited this movement. Behind her, chants built like thunder. Justice for Jamal! Justice for Jamal! An unmarked van pulled up near the hospital entrance. Security hustled Jamal through the back door, Marcus at his side, Evelyn close behind. Flashbulbs exploded as cameras caught the first glimpse of Jamal outside since his press conference. Reporters shouted questions, but he kept his eyes forward. The ride downtown felt endless. Jamal pressed his forehead against the window, watching the city blur past, murals of his face, vigils still burning, crowds marching with signs. He whispered to himself, "They're waiting for me." Marcus overheard and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "They're standing with you." At the plaza, the noise was overwhelming. Jamal's heart pounded as he climbed the steps to the stage, the roar of the crowd washing over him. Cameras ringed the edges, microphones clustered at the podium like a forest of steel stems. Amanda's voice cut through the chaos. "He's here! Jamal Carter is stepping up to the microphone now." Jamal gripped the podium, his ribs aching as he leaned forward. For a moment he froze, the sheer scale of the moment threatening to swallow him. Then he spotted Evelyn in the front row, knitting needles paused in her lap, eyes fixed on him with unwavering faith. His father stood nearby, jaw set like stone. Jamal took a breath. "My name is Jamal Carter," he began, his voice carrying across the plaza. "You've seen the video. You've seen the bruises, but I want you to know what it felt like." The crowd fell silent. "I was walking home with groceries for my grandma, that's it. I wasn't breaking a law, I wasn't carrying a weapon. But to Officer Briggs, none of that mattered. He saw my skin and decided I was guilty." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jamal's voice grew stronger. "When he slammed me against his car, I thought I might not make it home. I thought my grandma might be waiting with no one coming back through the door, and no kid should ever have to think that." The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, chants roaring even louder. From the back of the plaza, Amanda reported seat, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment. Jamal Carter is delivering a raw, powerful speech. He's not just telling his story, he's channeling the voices of countless others who face the same. Jamal raised his hand, and the noise quieted again. "This isn't just about me, it's about every child stopped for no reason, every family scared to see flashing lights in their rearview, every parent who has to tell their kids how to survive a police stop. This city deserves better. This country deserves better." Cheers erupted again, but Jamal pressed on. Forgiveness comes after accountability, and accountability starts here, today. The plaza exploded in applause, chants echoing off nearby buildings. Evelyn wiped tears from her cheeks. Marcus's eyes glistened, though he stood tall, knowing his son had just given the city something no politician could. At the precinct, officers watched the rally on muted TVs. Some cursed under their breath. Others sat in silence, expressions conflicted. One rookie muttered, "He's right." No one argued. Back at the plaza, Jamal finished with words that shook the city. "I'm not here because I wanted to be. I'm here because this happened to me, and too many others. But I promise you this, I'll keep speaking until no kid has to fear the people sworn to protect them." The plaza erupted one last time, chants of his name thundering into the sky. Amanda turned to the camera, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. Tonight, Brookdale didn't just hear from a victim, it heard from a leader. Later, back at the hospital, Jamal sat exhausted but lighter somehow. Evelyn kissed his forehead, whispering, "You did good, baby, real good." Marcus sat across from him, pride radiating in his tired eyes. "You gave them hope, son. And now you're ready for Washington." Jamal leaned back, closing his eyes as the echoes of the crowd still rang in his ears. For the first time, he believed it too. By dawn the next morning, Jamal's rally speech had already gone viral. Clips spread across social media like wildfire. Jamal at the podium, bruised but unbroken, declaring forgiveness comes after accountability. Hashtags trended nationwide. News anchors replayed his words on loop. Panelists debated what they meant for the future of policing in America. Inside City Hall, Marcus Carter sat in his office, staring at a wall of screens tracking the coverage. Some networks hailed Jamal as a new voice for justice. Others accused Marcus of using his son as a political prop. Jordan, his aide, entered with a grim look. "We've received threats, Marcus, not just online noise, credible ones. The FBI flagged 2 messages calling for violence at your next public event." Marcus leaned back, exhaustion pressing down. "They think fear will break us." Jordan set the folder on his desk. "Fear doesn't scare me, but you're not just a mayor now, you're the father of the kid everyone's watching. They'll aim at you harder than ever." At Brookdale General, Jamal scrolled through his phone, watching strangers debate his life. Some praised him as brave, others mocked him. A few comments cut sharp. Kid's a liar. Staged for politics. Evelyn noticed his frown. Don't you dare let trolls live rent-free in your head, baby. You saw the crowd, you heard them. That's what matters. Jamal sighed, handing her the phone. It just feels like I can't breathe without the whole world watching. Alicia Green entered then, carrying a laptop. That's because the whole world is watching. But Jamal, that's power, and we need to decide how to use it. Jamal rubbed his temples. Do I even get to decide? Or is it already bigger than me? Alicia's gaze softened. It's bigger than you, yes, but it doesn't move without you. Across town, the police union office buzzed with fury. Frank Delaney slapped a newspaper on the table, Jamal's face glaring from the front page. He's turning the country against us, and the mayor's milking it for all it's worth. One veteran officer muttered, maybe the kid's just telling the truth. Delaney snapped back, truth? The truth is we're under siege. If we don't fight back, they'll tear this department apart. But silence filled the room. Loyalty was thinning. Even some of the hardliners couldn't ignore the footage anymore. That evening, Amanda Torres sat in her news van, preparing for her broadcast. Through the windshield, she saw more protesters pouring into Brookdale Plaza, candles in hand, signs lifted high. She turned to her cameraman. This isn't a local story anymore. This is national. And every moment, Jamal's words are echoing louder. Inside City Hall, Marcus convened with his staff. Chief Martinez laid out grim statistics. Response times are still terrible. We've had break-ins, assaults, citizens are furious. Some are blaming the slowdown, but others are starting to say it's on you. Marcus's jaw tightened. Let them. Accountability was never easy. But if we bend now, nothing changes. Jordan hesitated. Marcus, you're risking re-election. You're risking everything. Marcus stood, voice steady but unyielding. I'm risking it because my son risked his life just walking home. If I can't fight for him, I don't deserve this office. Meanwhile, Jamal couldn't sleep. He paced the hospital room slowly, each step sending pain through his ribs. Evelyn sat watching, knitting needles clicking softly. You keep walking like that, baby. You'll wear a hole in the floor, she teased gently. Jamal stopped, staring out the window at the candlelit crowd below. Grandma, what if I can't handle this? What if I mess up in Washington? Evelyn put down her knitting and stood, steady despite her years. She placed her hands on his shoulders. Baby, you already did the hard part. You stood up when the world wanted you silent. Washington? That's just the next room. At the precinct, Briggs sat in his cell, stewing. He watched Jamal's rally on replay, each word cutting deeper. His face twisted, but there was something new in his eyes. Doubt. Kid's playing the victim, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. The guard leaned on the bars, smirking. Funny thing about victims, they don't usually have thousands chanting their names. Looks like you picked the wrong fight. Briggs turned away, but Jamal's voice still echoed from the TV. No kid should ever have to think they might die buying groceries. Back at the hospital, Alicia finished another rehearsal session with Jamal. His words were sharper now, his delivery steadier. You're ready, she said softly. Congress won't know what hit them. Jamal exhaled, exhaustion mingling with resolve. Then let's finish this. That night, Marcus stood at his office window again, looking out over the city alive with protest chants. The threats were real, the risks greater than ever. But as the candlelight spread across the streets, he felt something stronger than fear. Momentum. Brookdale wasn't bowing, it was rising. By Monday morning, the Carter family's lives felt like they were unfolding under a microscope. Jamal's speech had turned him into a symbol. Everywhere Marcus went, City Hall, the grocery store, even church, reporters and protesters trailed behind, but with the attention came danger. Marcus arrived at his office to find Rivera from Internal Affairs waiting with grim eyes. She slid an envelope across his desk. Inside were photos of Jamal walking the hospital corridors, taken from outside the window, zoomed and grainy. Marcus's stomach tightened. Where did these come from? Anonymous email, Rivera replied. No message, just the photos. We think someone's watching your son. Marcus's jaw clenched. That crosses a line, Rivera nodded. We're increasing security around the hospital, but you should know there's chatter online. Some extremists are calling Jamal a fraud, others calling for violence. Marcus pressed his palms flat on the desk, fury boiling beneath the surface. They want to scare us silent. That's not happening. At Brookdale General, Jamal sat with Alicia, notebook open. He had been refining his testimony, but his hand froze mid-sentence when Marcus entered, his face tight. "What's wrong?" Jamal asked immediately. Marcus hesitated, then chose honesty. "Someone's been taking pictures of you." From outside the hospital, Evelyn gasped, dropping her knitting needles. "Lord have mercy!" Jamal's face paled, but then hardened. "So what? Let them take pictures, I'm not hiding." Marcus sat beside him, lowering his voice. "Jay, this isn't about hiding, it's about safety. We'll have extra guards, escorts. No unnecessary risks." Jamal stared at his father for a long moment. "Dad, if they're that scared of me speaking, then maybe that means I have to." Marcus's chest ached with pride and fear all at once. His boy was growing into a man before his eyes. Meanwhile, at the precinct, the union office buzzed with low murmurs. Delaney slammed a fist on the table. "The mayor just suspended 12 of our men and now he's parading his kid like some hero. Are we just going to sit here?" A lieutenant spoke cautiously. "With respect, Frank, people are starting to question Briggs. The video's clear. And Jamal, he's convincing. Maybe doubling down isn't the move." Delaney's face twisted. "If you want to roll over, fine. But the rest of us are fighting." But even as he spoke, cracks widened. The old loyalty wasn't holding anymore. At the hospital, Jamal practiced again, Alicia recording him on her phone. "My name is Jamal Carter. I'm 17 and I want to talk about fear. The fear I felt when I was slammed against a car, and the fear every kid feels when flashing lights appear behind them." He paused, voice trembling. Evelyn whispered, "It's okay, baby. Let him hear the crack in your voice. That's real." Jamal continued, stronger now. "But fear doesn't get the last word. Truth does. And the truth is, no child should have to survive the people sworn to protect them." Alicia stopped recording, nodding slowly. "That's it, Jamal. That's the line that will echo in Congress." That night, Marcus returned home to find an envelope slipped under the door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Keep your boy quiet, or we will." He stood frozen in the kitchen, the words burning in his hands. Evelyn entered, saw the paper, and covered her mouth in horror. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. Marcus's voice was steel. "I'm going to protect my son, and I'm not backing down." The next day, Amanda Torres reported live from outside City Hall. Sources confirm Mayor Carter has received direct threats against his family. Despite this, he has vowed to continue pushing reforms and supporting his son's testimony. Brookdale is bracing for what comes next. Behind her, chants filled the air once more. Protesters lit candles, their voices rising. "No fear, no silence!" Inside his hospital room, Jamal watched the coverage. His ribs still ached, but his spirit burned brighter. He turned to his father and said quietly, "They can threaten me all they want. I'm still going to Washington." Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his voice low but steady. "And I'll be right beside you." At the precinct, Briggs watched the same report on TV. For the first time, he saw the scale of it. Crowds chanting Jamal's name, national anchors replaying his words, his own face barely mentioned anymore. He muttered to himself, "They've already forgotten me." The guard outside shook his head. "No, Briggs, they remember, just not the way you wanted." Briggs turned away, but the chant still echoed from the TV. No fear, no silence. That night, as the city glowed with candlelight vigils, Jamal lay in bed, whispering into the dark. "They can watch me. They can threaten me. But I'm not stopping." And somewhere deep inside, he knew the battle wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone who'd ever been silenced. Tuesday morning broke heavy with tension. Outside Brookdale General, news vans lined the block. Satellite dishes pointed toward the sky. Protesters chanted in waves while counter-protesters stood across the street, their shouts clashing in the air. Police barricades kept the groups apart, but the atmosphere hummed with the threat of violence. Inside, Jamal Carter sat nervously at a small table, facing a camera crew setting up for his first national interview. Evelyn smoothed his hoodie, whispering, "Remember, baby, you just tell your truth, yup." Marcus stood near the door, arms crossed, scanning every corner. Extra security ringed the room, plainclothes FBI agents after the threats had escalated. Alicia Green crouched beside Jamal, her voice steady. "The host will ask questions, but you control the narrative. Don't let them corner you. Speak to the people, not the cameras." Jamal nodded, palms sweaty. What if I mess up? Marcus leaned down, voice firm but warm. Son, the only way you mess up is if you stay silent. The red light blinked on, and the interviewer's voice filled the air. We're here with Jamal Carter, the teenager whose beating by police has sparked national protests. Jamal, thank you for speaking with us. Jamal's throat tightened, but he forced the words out. Thank you for letting me. Jamal, the host continued, some critics say your story is being used as a political tool by your father, the mayor. What do you say to that? Jamal straightened, anger flashing in his eyes. My ribs were broken. My face was bruised. That wasn't politics. That was my life. My dad didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for this. But since it happened, we're not going to stay quiet. The crew exchanged glances, the conviction in his voice undeniable. Across the city, bars, cafes, and living rooms tuned in. Protesters stopped mid-chant to watch the live broadcast on their phones. In the precinct, officers huddled around a muted TV, faces tense. Briggs, still in his cell, leaned forward as Jamal's voice echoed through the static. What I want people to know, Jamal said, steady now, is that I'm not just a headline. I'm someone's son, someone's grandson. I was just buying ginger ale for my grandma, and because of the color of my skin, I ended up in a hospital bed. The interviewer paused, giving him space. And yet, you've become the face of a national movement. How does that feel? Jamal hesitated, then answered quietly, It feels heavy, but it also feels like maybe I can stop someone else from going through what I did. If that's my role, then I'll carry it. Amanda Torres reported live from the plaza as the interview played on a giant screen set up for the crowd. You can hear the silence here. Thousands are watching, hanging on every word. The moment Jamal said, If that's my role, I'll carry it, the crowd erupted in chants of his name. At City Hall, Marcus's staff watched from the conference room. Jordan whispered, He's good. Better than any speechwriter could make him. Marcus stood in the back, pride mixing with fear. His son was shouldering a nation, but every word painted a bigger target on his back. When the interview ended, Jamal exhaled, his hands trembling. Evelyn hugged him tight. You did it, baby. You showed them your heart. Marcus crouched in front of him, his eyes moist. You were stronger than I ever imagined, Jay. But before they could celebrate, Rivera entered with urgent news. Mayor, we've intercepted chatter. Certain groups are planning to disrupt Jamal's testimony in Washington. This isn't just threats anymore, it's organized. Marcus's jaw hardened. Then we take every precaution. My son will speak. Nothing stops that. That evening, Amanda reported the fallout. Jamal Carter's first national interview has electrified supporters and rattled opponents. Social media lit up with praise, while some critics doubled down, calling his family opportunists. Meanwhile, security concerns are mounting ahead of Jamal's upcoming congressional testimony. Behind her, the chants outside the hospital grew louder. No fear, no silence. In his cell, Briggs muttered at the screen. Kid thinks he's a hero. But his voice cracked, sounding less certain. The guard smirked. Sounds like America already thinks he is. Briggs turned away, but the echoes of chants filled the room. Later that night, Jamal sat by the hospital window, staring out at the candles glowing below. Alicia joined him quietly. You know, Jamal, movements aren't made by perfect people. They're made by people willing to stand when it's hardest. Today, you stood, Jamal whispered. It doesn't feel like I stood. It feels like I just didn't fall. Alicia smiled softly. That's enough. That's everything. As the city settled into uneasy night, Marcus stood watch at his son's door, the weight of both mayor and father heavy on his shoulders. He knew the days ahead would test them more than ever, but as he listened to the chants drifting through the window, he also knew something else. Brookdale wasn't bending, it was rising. By Wednesday morning, Brookdale was buzzing with the aftershocks of Jamal's interview. The clip of him declaring, My ribs were broken, that wasn't politics, that was my life, had been replayed millions of times. To supporters, he was a symbol of courage. To detractors, he was the spark of a fire they wanted to snuff out. At City Hall, Marcus Carter walked into the council chamber where staff had gathered. Jordan handed him a briefing packet with an apologetic look. We've got a problem. Overnight, false reports started circulating that city funds were misused for the protests. Marcus frowned, flipping through the papers. Misused how? Someone leaked doctored invoices suggesting your office paid activists. It's already trending online. Hashtag bought and paid is everywhere. Marcus slammed the packet down. That's not a mistake, it's sabotage. Rivera from Internal Affairs added, "We traced the leaks to a server outside the city. Could be union allies, could be extremists trying to discredit you." Marcus clenched his fists. "Then we hit back with the truth. Fast. Release every financial record. Show them we've got nothing to hide." At Brookdale General, Jamal sat with Alicia, who read aloud from her laptop. "Listen to this. Teen actor playing the victim, fathers pulling strings." And here's another. "How convenient he's testifying before Congress. Scripted, fake, staged." Jamal sank into his chair, his ribs throbbing as though the words themselves were blows. "They'll never believe me, will they?" Alicia closed the laptop firmly. "Forget them. Lies are loud, but truth lasts longer. What matters is how you speak in Washington, not what trolls say online." Evelyn touched Jamal's hand, her voice soft but steady. "Baby, people can twist anything, but they can't twist the truth you lived." Meanwhile, Amanda Torres reported from outside the hospital, her tone sharp. "Today, the Carter administration is facing a new wave of accusations, claims that protests were staged with city funds. Our investigation shows no evidence so far, but the narrative is spreading fast, fueled by union supporters and anonymous online accounts." The timing couldn't be more suspicious as Jamal Carter prepares for his testimony. Behind her, protesters chanted louder, determined to drown out the noise. "Truth, not lies! Truth, not lies!" At the precinct, Delaney smirked as officers passed around screenshots of the trending accusations. "See, public opinion can turn with the right push. The mayor's losing ground." But one rookie shook his head. "Or maybe people are starting to see through it. My sister was at the rally. She said Jamal sounded more honest than anyone she's ever heard." Delaney's grin faltered. Cracks in loyalty deepened. Back at City Hall, Marcus held a press conference, standing tall before flashing cameras. "These allegations are false. Every dollar spent by this office is on record, and we've made those records public today. The truth is simple. Protests in this city are not staged. They are real, they are organic, and they come from pain." Reporters shouted questions, but Marcus raised his voice over them. "If you want to know what's real, ask my son about the bruises on his ribs. Ask him about the blood on his shirt. Those weren't scripted. That was violence. That was injustice." His words cut through the frenzy, but he knew the smear wouldn't vanish overnight. That evening, Jamal sat with his father in the hospital room. The TV replayed Marcus's press conference, the mayor's voice fierce and raw. "Dad," Jamal said quietly, "do you ever feel like they'll twist everything no matter what we say?" Marcus sat beside him, his face tired but resolute. "All the time. But here's the difference. Lies collapse on themselves. Truth builds. It might take longer, but it lasts." Jamal nodded slowly, clutching his notebook. "Then I'll keep building." In his cell, Briggs watched the coverage, the smear campaign plastered across the news. For a moment, he smirked, until the broadcast cut to Jamal's rally speech replaying. "No child should have to survive the people sworn to protect them." Briggs's smirk faded. The guard nearby muttered, "Looks like the kid's voice is louder than your excuses." Briggs turned away, but the words followed him into the silence. Late that night, Marcus walked the hospital corridor alone, the weight of father and mayor pressing down. He paused outside Jamal's room, peering in at his son scribbling in his notebook by lamplight. Despite the smear campaigns, the threats, the fear, Jamal was still writing, still preparing. Rivera appeared quietly at his side. "Mayor, you know this won't stop. They'll keep trying to break you. Break him." Marcus exhaled, eyes fixed on his son. "Then let them try. We've already survived worse." And with that, he stepped into the room, ready to fight another day. By Thursday afternoon, the plaza outside City Hall was alive again. Despite the smear campaign flooding social media, thousands gathered, waving signs and chanting Jamal's name. Some carried homemade posters showing his bruised face beside words like truth and justice. From the hospital van, Jamal watched through tinted windows as the crowd swelled. His stomach twisted with nerves. What if they don't believe me anymore? What if the lies worked? Evelyn reached over, patting his hand gently. "Baby, look at them. That doesn't look like doubt to me." Marcus, seated across from him, nodded. "You don't measure truth in hashtags. You measure it in people willing to stand outside all day to hear you." Alicia leaned in with her clipboard. "Remember, keep it raw. Don't defend against lies. Tell your truth. The contrast will do the work." As they approached the plaza, Amanda Torres delivered her live report from the front lines. The smear campaign accusing the Carter family of staging protests has dominated headlines for days. But as you can see behind me, the people of Brookdale have shown up in force to make their own statement. The camera panned over the chanting crowd. "Justice for Jamal!" thundered through the air. Backstage, Jamal paced, ribs aching but adrenaline pushing him forward. He could hear the chants vibrating through the boards beneath his feet. Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "This isn't about the lies anymore. This is about reminding them who you are." Jamal nodded, heart pounding. "I'm ready." The MC introduced him. "Please welcome the young man whose courage has given this city hope, Jamal Carter." The plaza erupted in cheers as Jamal stepped into the sunlight. He squinted against the flash of cameras, the roar of voices pressing in from all sides. He gripped the podium, steadying himself, and let the silence settle. "My name is Jamal Carter," he began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "And I'm not here to talk about rumors or lies. I'm here to talk about what happened to me, and what happens to too many kids who look like me." The crowd quieted, leaning into every word. "I was just walking home with groceries for my grandma. That's it. But to Officer Briggs, I wasn't a kid. I wasn't someone's grandson. I was a threat. He slammed me against his car. He broke my ribs. And while I lay on the ground, all I could think was, will I make it home alive?" Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jamal's voice grew stronger. "Those bruises weren't staged. That pain wasn't scripted. And no smear campaign will erase it. You saw it with your own eyes. The truth is right here." He tapped his chest, the crowd responding with a roar of applause. Across the plaza, Amanda's voice cut through live coverage. Jamal Carter is directly confronting the accusations, not by defending himself, but by grounding his story in raw truth. The crowd is with him, utterly silent one moment, roaring the next. Jamal raised his hand for quiet. "This fight isn't just mine. It belongs to every kid who's been stopped for no reason, to every parent who's had to give their child the talk about how to survive a police stop, and to every city that's been told to settle for silence." Cheers thundered back. "No fear, no silence." Tears filled Evelyn's eyes in the front row. She whispered, "That's my boy." At the precinct, officers gathered around a TV. Some stared in silence, others muttered under their breath. The rookie from before crossed his arms. "He's not lying, you can hear it." For the first time, no one argued. Jamal leaned closer to the mic, his voice steady. "They can lie about us, they can smear us, but lies collapse. Truth lasts. And the truth is this: I'm still here, I'm still standing, and I won't stop speaking until justice belongs to everyone." The plaza erupted, cheers shaking the ground. Chants of "Jamal, Jamal, Choi" rose like a tidal wave. Amanda's voice, nearly drowned out by the noise, said into her mic, "Brookdale has made its choice. The people still believe." Afterward, backstage, Jamal collapsed into a chair, exhausted but glowing with relief. Alicia crouched beside him, smiling. "You didn't just survive the smear, you buried it." Marcus bent down, gripping his son's shoulders firmly. "You reminded them what can't be faked. Courage." Evelyn kissed Jamal's forehead, whispering, "You gave them hope, baby, and hope is stronger than any lie." That night, the footage played on every major network. Across the country, living rooms buzzed with his words. Hashtags shifted and the narrative flipped. Truth over lies trended within hours. And in his cell, Briggs watched, unable to turn away as the chants filled the TV once again. No fear, no silence. He lowered his head, realizing the tide had turned for good. Friday dawned with a strange calm in Brookdale, the kind that settles before a storm. The city had spent weeks in turmoil, yet this morning the plaza was quieter. Protesters still gathered, but their chants were softer, replaced by murmurs of expectation. Everyone knew the next chapter of Jamal Carter's journey wouldn't be in Brookdale, it would be in Washington. Inside the hospital, Jamal zipped his bag slowly, Evelyn watching from her chair. Her hands shook as she tried to fold one of his hoodies into the bag. "You sure you're ready for this, baby?" Jamal smiled faintly. "I've been ready since the night Briggs put me in the hospital. I just didn't know it then." Evelyn sniffled, her eyes watering. "You remember what I told you? Don't read it. Feel it. Speak to them like they're right here in front of you." "I will, Grandma," Jamal whispered, hugging her tightly. Meanwhile, at City Hall, Marcus faced his own storm. Jordan rushed into his office, breathless, clutching a folder. "Mayor, there's been a breach. Internal emails leaked overnight. Someone's claiming you coordinated with activists to stage the protests. Marcus snatched the folder, scanning the documents. They were convincing, doctored to look authentic. He slammed his fist on the desk. Sabotage. Again. Rivera entered moments later, her expression grim. We traced it. Whoever's behind this is inside City Hall. They're trying to hit you while Jamal's on the national stage. Marcus's voice was low, measured. Then expose them. Today. Before my son steps foot in Washington, I want the truth out. At Brookdale General, Alicia briefed Jamal one last time. Congress isn't like rallies. They'll try to rattle you, throw sharp questions, make you doubt yourself. But remember, you don't owe them polished answers. You owe them honesty. Jamal nodded, gripping his notebook. Honesty I can do. Marcus arrived, shoulders heavy but voice steady. Son, there are people trying to tear us down with lies. But the only thing stronger than their lies is your truth. When you stand in that chamber, you carry all of Brookdale with you. Evelyn chuckled softly, wiping her eyes. And a little bit of your grandma's stubbornness. By afternoon, the Carter family walked out of the hospital under a sea of cameras. Protesters chanted Jamal's name, their signs lifted high as the motorcade pulled up. Reporters shouted questions, flashbulbs bursting, but Jamal kept his eyes forward. Amanda Torres delivered a live update from the curb. This is it. Jamal Carter, the teen whose story has gripped the nation, is leaving Brookdale General to head for Washington. His testimony is expected to be one of the most consequential moments in the national conversation on policing. The motorcade rolled through the streets, passing murals of Jamal painted on walls, candles still burning at vigils, children holding signs that read, "For Jamal, for us." Jamal pressed his forehead against the window, whispering, "This isn't just about me anymore." Marcus heard him, replying softly, "No, son, it never was." Back at City Hall, Rivera called Marcus with breaking news. "Mayor, we found the leak. It was a staffer planted months ago by the union. We have the evidence. The smear will collapse by morning." Marcus exhaled, relief washing through him. Good. Then nothing stands in Jamal's way. At the airport hangar, the Carter family boarded a government plane provided for their safety. The interior was quiet, the hum of the engines steady. Alicia sat across from Jamal, flipping through his notes. "Run it one more time?" she asked. Jamal shook his head. "No, if I rehearse it again, it'll sound rehearsed. I need to speak from where it hurts." Marcus studied his son for a long moment. "Then speak from there, Jay. That's where people will listen." As the plane lifted off, Amanda reported live from the tarmac. Tonight, the Carter family departs for Washington. What began as a violent encounter outside a corner store has grown into a movement watched by millions. All eyes now turn to Jamal Carter and the words he will deliver to the nation. In his cell, Briggs watched the takeoff on the news. He muttered bitterly, "The kid's untouchable now." The guard shook his head. "No, Briggs, he's unbreakable. There's a difference." Briggs turned away, but even in the silence of the cell, the chants from outside echoed faintly. "No fear, no silence." On the plane, Jamal leaned back, his ribs still aching but his spirit firm. Evelyn dozed beside him, clutching her knitting bag. Alicia typed furiously on her laptop, preparing press releases. Marcus sat across from him, eyes tired but proud. Jamal whispered to himself, barely audible over the engines. "I'm ready." Marcus heard him and smiled faintly. "Yes, son, you are." As the city lights of Brookdale faded beneath them, Jamal Carter's journey was no longer just about survival. It was about transformation, his city's, and maybe even his country's. The plane touched down in Washington under a gray, overcast sky. Rain slicked the tarmac, glistening beneath floodlights as the Carter family disembarked. A wall of reporters and camera crews waited behind barricades, their shouts piercing the humid air. "Jamal, are you ready to testify? Mayor Carter, what reforms are you pushing? Mrs. Carter, how has this affected your family?" Jamal kept his head high, though his stomach churned. Alicia walked close at his side, whispering, "Eyes forward. Don't answer until it's the podium. Every word matters now." Marcus raised a hand to the crowd. "We'll address the press later. Right now, our priority is Jamal's testimony." Secret Service agents guided them into black SUVs, whisking them away from the chaos. Jamal sat in silence, watching the Capitol dome loom larger through rain-speckled glass. At the hotel, the family gathered in a suite converted into a secure command center. Evelyn sat by the window, knitting needles clicking nervously. Marcus stood at the table, reviewing schedules with Rivera, who had flown in to oversee security. Crowds are already gathering outside the Capitol, Rivera reported. Supporters, counter-protesters, media. We'll move Jamal through the service entrance, but once he's inside, it's up to him. Marcus glanced at his son. Jamal sat with his notebook, fingers tracing words he had written, lips moving silently. You don't have to be perfect, Marcus said gently. You just have to be you. Jamal looked up, determination in his eyes. Being me is what got me here, so that's exactly who they'll get. The next morning, Washington buzzed with anticipation. News anchors spoke from the Capitol steps, their breath visible in the chilly air. Amanda Torres, now on national assignment, stood among them. Today, 17-year-old Jamal Carter, the teenager whose assault by a police officer sparked nationwide protests, will testify before Congress. His words could shape the future of federal policing reform. Behind her, crowds swelled. Some carried signs of support, justice for Jamal, while others carried hostile banners, their voices sharp. Police and barricades kept them apart, tension simmering. Inside the Capitol, Jamal's heart pounded as he walked through marble halls echoing with footsteps. Portraits of past leaders stared down at him. Alicia adjusted his tie, whispering, "This isn't their house today, it's yours." In the chamber, seats filled with lawmakers, staffers, and cameras. The chairman banged the gavel. We now welcome Jamal Carter. The room rose in a hush as Jamal stepped forward, bruises faded but still visible. He adjusted the microphone, his hand trembling slightly. My name is Jamal Carter, he began, voice steady despite the storm in his chest. I'm 17 years old, and I'm here today because one night I went to buy ginger ale for my grandmother and ended up beaten on the pavement. Gasps rippled through the audience. Lawmakers leaned in. Cameras zoomed closer. I wasn't armed. I wasn't breaking the law. I was a kid walking home. But to Officer Briggs, that didn't matter. He saw my skin before he saw me. He decided I was guilty before I even spoke. He broke my ribs, he bloodied my face, and while I lay on the ground, I thought, this is how I die. The chamber was silent. Even the scribbling of pens paused. Jamal's voice grew stronger. But I didn't die. I lived. And because I lived, I'm standing here to tell you, no child should ever feel that fear. No parent should ever wonder if their kid will come home because of the color of their skin. At the hotel, Evelyn watched on TV, tears streaming down her cheeks. That's my baby. Back in Brookdale, crowds in the plaza stood frozen, eyes glued to giant screens. When Jamal spoke the words, no child should ever feel that fear, the crowd erupted into chants of his name. One congressman cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, some claim your testimony is politically motivated. How do you respond? Jamal met his gaze head-on. My bruises weren't political. My broken ribs weren't staged. My fear wasn't a performance. This isn't politics, it's my life. The chamber stirred, murmurs spreading like wildfire. Amanda Torres whispered into her mic outside. He's dismantling every criticism in real time. The crowd here is reacting with awe. Jamal leaned closer to the mic, his final words sharp as steel. Forgiveness comes after accountability. And accountability starts with you, the leaders in this room. If you really believe in justice, then prove it. Not for me, for the next kid who just wants to get home safe. The chamber erupted, some in applause, some in stunned silence. Cameras captured every moment. Afterward, Jamal walked out, exhausted but unbowed. Marcus met him in the corridor, pulling him into a tight embrace. You did it, son. You gave them the truth. Now it's theirs to carry. Jamal exhaled, shoulders trembling. Feels like I left a piece of myself in there. Marcus smiled faintly. Maybe you did, but what you left will change more than you know. The sun had dipped low over Washington by the time Jamal stepped out of the Capitol. His testimony still echoed through the halls, lawmakers debating behind closed doors, reporters scrambling to frame the story. Outside, the air crackled with anticipation. Supporters chanted his name while opponents hurled insults, their voices colliding in the cold evening. Jamal stood on the Capitol steps beside his father, shoulders heavy but eyes steady. Marcus squeezed his son's hand. You carried it, Jay. No matter what they decide in there, you gave them the truth. Evelyn wiped tears from her cheeks, proud beyond words. Alicia leaned close, whispering, this was bigger than testimony. It was a turning point. The crowd parted slightly as Amanda Torres went live, camera fixed on Jamal. Today, 17-year-old Jamal Carter delivered one of the most powerful testimonies Congress has heard in years. His words, "Forgiveness comes after accountability," are already being quoted across the nation. Tonight, all eyes remain on Capitol Hill, waiting for lawmakers to act. Back in Brookdale, the plaza was electric. Giant screens replayed Jamal's speech as thousands gathered shoulder to shoulder, candles in hand. When he said on screen, "My bruises weren't political, my fear wasn't a performance," the crowd erupted, chanting his name until the sound shook storefront windows. Inside his cell, Briggs sat slumped on his cot, staring blankly at the TV mounted on the wall. His own face, once feared, was now a footnote in Jamal's story. The guard passing by muttered, "Looks like the kid did what you never could, earn respect." Briggs said nothing. For the first time, silence felt heavier than bars. In Washington, Jamal and his family gathered in a hotel suite, exhaustion hanging in the air. Rivera stood guard at the door, speaking quietly into her radio. Marcus paced near the window, waiting for updates from the Hill. Finally, Jordan rushed in, phone in hand, breathless. "They're moving forward. Congress just announced an emergency committee to draft national policing reforms. Jamal, your testimony pushed it over the edge." The room froze. Evelyn gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Marcus stopped pacing, his eyes moist. They actually listened. Jamal sat heavily on the couch, the weight of it crashing over him. "So, it mattered? All of it?" Alicia crouched beside him, smiling softly. "More than you'll ever know." That night, Amanda's broadcast reached millions. In an unprecedented move, Congress has announced immediate steps toward reform following Jamal Carter's testimony. The young man from Brookdale has become a symbol of resilience, his words sparking what some are calling the Carter moment. Across the nation, rallies are forming, not in anger alone, but in hope. The screen split to show Brookdale Plaza, where chants of "No fear, no silence" shook the night. Later, Jamal stepped out onto the hotel balcony, overlooking the city bathed in light. His ribs still ached, his body still bore the scars, but his spirit felt lighter. Marcus joined him quietly, leaning on the railing. "You changed something today," Marcus said, voice low. Jamal shook his head. "We did. You stood by me. Grandma never let me give up. Alicia taught me to use my voice. I carried all of you into that room." Marcus's throat tightened. "Son, you carried more than us. You carried a country on your back, and you didn't let it break you." Jamal looked at his father, eyes shimmering. Then maybe now another kid won't have to carry it alone. Back in Brookdale, Evelyn returned home, the knitting she'd carried to every hospital room now resting on her lap. On the TV, Jamal's face filled the screen, his words replaying again and again. She whispered to the empty room, "You gave them hope, baby. You gave them all hope." At dawn the next morning, Jamal and Marcus walked together through the quiet Capitol grounds before their flight home. The air was cool, the marble steps glistening in the first light. Jamal stopped, looking up at the dome towering above. "Feels bigger than me," he murmured. Marcus placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "It is, but you reminded them what justice looks like, and that can never be taken back." Jamal exhaled, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Then it was worth it. When they returned to Brookdale, the city erupted in celebration. Crowds flooded the streets, holding candles and signs, cheering as the Carter family stepped out of the motorcade. Children climbed onto shoulders, chanting Jamal's name. Amanda's final broadcast captured the moment. What began with violence outside a corner store has ended with a community, and perhaps a nation, rising together. Tonight, Jamal Carter returns not just as a survivor, but as a catalyst for change. The chants swelled. "Justice for Jamal! Justice for all!" That evening, Jamal stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the candlelight glowing across the city. For the first time in weeks, he felt peace. He whispered into the night, not to cameras, not to crowds, but to himself, "I'm still here, and I'm not done."